Let's talk about emotional safety, because this is the one feeling that women quietly crave in a relationship, even more than romance, gifts, or grand gestures. And yet, it's the one feeling so many men overlook. You see, when a woman doesn't feel emotionally safe, she doesn't open up, she doesn't soften, she doesn't trust fully. But when she does feel safe, everything about her changes. Her body language, her tone, her energy. She moves from guarded to glowing. And that shift, that's what makes her fall in love on a level that's hard to put into words. Emotional safety isn't about never disagreeing or always being polite. It's about knowing that she can show up as her real, raw self and you won't flinch. It's about you being the kind of man who doesn't just listen to her words, but listens to her silences. The kind of man who doesn't try to fix her when she's vulnerable, but instead holds space for her. Because contrary to popular belief, women don't always want solutions. Sometimes they just want to feel felt. You build emotional safety through consistency. How you react when she's angry, how you hold her when she's scared, how you speak about her when she's not around. It's not something you can fake, and it's not something that happens overnight. But once a woman sees that you're stable, not just in mood but in presence, it disarms her. Her nervous system relaxes. She feels home in your energy. Now, there's a philosophical layer to this, too. Emotional safety speaks to something ancient within a woman, the desire to surrender without fear. That kind of surrender only comes when she knows she's not being emotionally manipulated or led into a trap. So ask yourself, when she brings her emotions to you, do you meet her with calm curiosity or with criticism? Do you validate her perspective, even if you don't fully understand it? That moment, right there, where you either choose empathy or ego, makes all the difference. In a world where women are constantly told to toughen up, stay guarded, and not trust easily, a man who gives her emotional safety is a rare gem. It makes you unforgettable. Not because you shouted your worth, but because your presence gave her peace. You were a refuge in a world of noise. So if you're wondering how to stand out, how to be the one she longs for when her guard is down, it's not about being louder, richer, or more charming. It's about being the one man in her life who makes her feel emotionally safe enough to just be. Because once a woman feels safe with you, she will give you access to parts of herself that no one else has ever seen. Be that space, be that peace, and you won't have to chase love. It will quietly and powerfully find its way to you. Now let's explore something that many men underestimate, the feeling of being chosen without pressure. When a woman feels that she can come closer to you on her own terms without being pushed, manipulated, or rushed, something powerful begins to shift inside her. It's subtle, it's psychological, and yet it's incredibly profound. Because women don't want to be captured, they want to gravitate. You see, we live in a time where attention is cheap. Everyone's trying to get noticed, to impress, to prove their worth. But what if you were the one man who didn't try to force connection, but instead embodied such grounded confidence that she felt drawn to you? That feeling, that freedom to choose you without fear or expectation, makes her feel respected. And more importantly, it makes her curious about you. There's a deep philosophical truth here. Women crave autonomy within connection. They want to know that if they move toward you, it's because their soul resonates with yours, not because you're demanding it or making them feel guilty if they don't respond the way you want. That kind of emotional space, it's rare and it speaks volumes. When a woman senses that you're not trying to take anything from her, whether it's her time, her body, or her affection, she relaxes. She leans in naturally. This is the kind of emotional maturity that separates a boy from a man, because it takes a great deal of inner security to hold space for someone without trying to control the outcome. Think about it. When someone pushes you to respond, to decide, to engage on their timeline, don't you instinctively pull away? That's basic human psychology. But the man who masters the art of giving emotional space, he's unforgettable because he allows desire to build. He allows trust to form. He allows the woman to arrive, not to be cornered. This doesn't mean you play passive or hide your interest. Quite the opposite. You show up with clarity, but you detach from the need for control. You're available, you're steady, but you're not desperate for her validation. That emotional posture, that self-contained strength, creates a magnetic pull. She senses that you're not just interested in having her, you're interested in honoring her process. And when a woman feels that, when she feels she can say yes to you because she wants to, not because she was cornered into it, her attraction deepens. It becomes rooted. It goes beyond the surface. So here's what I want you to sit with. The man who gives a woman the freedom to choose him without pressure is the man she never forgets. He becomes a quiet place in her memory, a space that felt safe, compelling, and deeply respectful. Be that man. Not the one who demands a connection, but the one who inspires it. There's a certain kind of emotional energy that captivates a woman, not through words, not through status, but through the way a man makes her feel seen, not just noticed, seen. And there's a world of difference between the two. A woman who feels seen feels understood without having to explain herself. She feels safe to show up without the need to perform. And when a man creates that kind of space, he unlocks something in her that even she may have hidden from the world. You see, most women walk through life being superficially admired. Compliments on her looks, her style, her voice, those are common. But few men ever pause long enough to recognize the complexity beneath her surface. Her thoughts, her insecurities, her silent dreams. And that's where real connection lives. When a woman senses that you care to understand her, not just to impress her or to win her, but to witness her, she lowers her guard. Because finally, someone isn't trying to fix her, possess her, or use her. Someone is simply present with her. It takes emotional intelligence to do this. It takes maturity to look beyond the performance people put on and see the person they rarely expose. And it takes inner stillness, not rushing to respond, not interrupting with your own agenda, to let her feel the weight of your attention. This is not about playing therapist. It's about listening with intention, asking questions, not to gather data, but to invite her essence to emerge, and being strong enough within yourself that you don't need her to be anyone else for your comfort. Philosophically speaking, the human soul longs to be recognized. That's why being truly seen can feel so intimate. It reflects back to someone that they exist beyond their function. And for women, who are often conditioned to give, to please, to accommodate, this feeling of being deeply seen without expectation, it's transformative. It whispers, you don't have to perform here, you're enough. The irony is, when a woman feels this kind of connection, her attraction multiplies. She begins to associate you with emotional freedom, with safety, and that more than any flirtation or charm creates a bond that's hard to break. So the real power lies not in how much attention you give, but in the quality of that attention. Are you present when she speaks? Do you notice what makes her go quiet? Do you sense when she's holding back, even when she says she's fine? These are the subtle cues that tell her you're paying attention, not just to her words, but to her. And that brings us to the heart of it. The man who sees a woman clearly gives her the rarest feeling of all, being understood without having to ask for it. And when a woman feels that from you, she doesn't just like you, she trusts you. And that trust is the beginning of something far deeper than attraction. It's the foundation of emotional intimacy. Never underestimate the power of being the man who truly sees. There's something incredibly magnetic about a man who doesn't need to prove himself constantly. And ironically, this is where so many men get it wrong. They believe they have to do more to be desired, say the right things, chase endlessly, impress at every turn. But in reality, the man who gives a woman space to miss him is the one who lingers in her mind the longest. Now, let's be clear. This isn't about playing games. It's not about being distant for the sake of creating mystery. This is about mastering the art of presence and absence with intention. A woman becomes intrigued when a man shows he has a life outside of her, when he isn't desperate for validation, when his identity isn't wrapped around how quickly she responds or how often she affirms him. That kind of grounded energy makes her pause. It makes her wonder. It stirs something within her that says, there's more to this man than meets the eye. You see, attraction thrives not in constant contact, but in subtle tension, in space, in that quiet gap where curiosity and longing grow. When a woman has room to process her feelings, to wonder what you're doing, to feel the absence of your presence, she's not detaching, she's engaging, emotionally, mentally. And that emotional engagement is often stronger than any message or date or compliment could ever be. Psychologically, this touches on the concept of intermittent reinforcement. We're wired to desire things more when they're not immediately or consistently available. It's not about being cold or manipulative, it's about being intentional. You're not available 24/7 because you're building your own life, investing in your growth, following your mission. And that reality becomes incredibly attractive because it tells her you're not trying to orbit around her world. You're inviting her into yours. Women long for men who are full within themselves, a man who can step back without fear, who can love without clinging, who can be attentive without being overbearing. That balance of interest and independence is rare, and it speaks volumes. It says you're secure. It says you don't need her attention to feel valuable, and it gives her the emotional space to choose you, not out of obligation, but desire. The most powerful men aren't the loudest or the most persistent. They're the ones who know when to lean in and when to step back. They're the ones who make a woman feel something even in their absence, because in that space, she begins to feel the value of your presence. And that's the key. A man who gives space doesn't lose her. He gives her the freedom to feel just how much he matters. Let her miss you. Let her wonder. Because it's in that gentle absence that the deepest connections are often born. And the man who understands this never has to chase. There's a distinct difference between a man who hears and a man who listens. One is passive, the other is deeply present. And what many men underestimate is just how profoundly women respond to the latter. It's not about nodding at the right time or offering quick fixes. It's about making a woman feel seen, heard, and understood in a world that constantly asks her to shrink or explain herself. When a man listens with intent, not just to respond, but to understand, he becomes a safe place, not a solution, not a rescuer, but a container. A grounded space where she doesn't have to perform, where she's allowed to unfold, emotionally, spiritually, fully. And in that kind of space, women don't just feel connection, they crave it. They gravitate toward it, often without even knowing why. You see, true listening is a powerful form of intimacy, and it's rare. In a society that rushes everything, especially conversations, most people are only half present. They're distracted. They're waiting for their turn to talk. They're more focused on being right than being receptive. But when a man pauses, holds silence, and invites her to speak without judgment or interruption, he signals something incredibly attractive: emotional maturity. And let's go deeper here. Women don't want you to fix all their problems. In fact, that can sometimes feel dismissive. What they want is to be felt. They want their emotions to be mirrored back with empathy, not minimized with logic. They want to know that their inner world matters, that what they say lingers in your mind long after the words are spoken, that you remember, that you care enough to recall the little things, not because you're trying to score points, but because you're genuinely invested in who she is beneath the surface. This kind of listening requires presence, and presence is one of the most powerful masculine energies you can embody. It doesn't demand, it doesn't chase, it simply holds. And in holding space like this, you give her permission to trust, to open, to connect, because you've proven that you're not just hearing her voice, you're attuned to her soul. So often we talk about attraction in terms of looks, status, or charisma. But the men who create deep, lasting emotional impact are the ones who practice conscious listening. They don't need to dominate the room. They let silence speak. They give energy rather than absorb it. And in doing so, they create the kind of resonance that stays with a woman long after the conversation ends. If you want to stand out in a world of noise, become the man who listens with his whole presence, not to impress her, not to manipulate her, but to honor her. Because the truth is, when a woman feels deeply heard, she also feels deeply loved. And there is no craving more powerful than that. There's one thing women never forget, even if they don't always talk about it. It's the feeling a man gives them when he stands rooted in his purpose. Not just ambition, not just career, but purpose. The thing that calls him, grounds him, and defines the energy he brings into every interaction. And whether she realizes it consciously or not, a woman can sense when a man has it, and when he doesn't. When a man is living in alignment with his purpose, something shifts in how he shows up. He moves with clarity, he speaks with conviction, he doesn't chase approval or bend to superficial trends, because he knows who he is and what he's building. And that kind of self-possession is magnetic. It creates safety, not the soft protective kind only, but the kind of psychological safety that tells a woman, this man won't be easily swayed. He knows where he's going. I can trust his direction. Now, here's where many men misunderstand. Being purpose-driven isn't about always being busy. It's not about ignoring love or partnership. In fact, the most grounded men understand how to balance the pursuit of their mission with emotional availability. But what they never do is allow their identity to be consumed by another person. They don't lose themselves in a relationship because they've already cultivated a solid relationship with themselves. That's the man a woman longs for, often in silence. The man who remains steady while the world spins. From a psychological lens, women are wired to seek emotional security, not in the form of wealth or status alone, but in consistency. Purpose is consistent. It's the fire that burns quietly even when life gets chaotic. When a woman sees that consistency in a man, how he keeps showing up for himself, how he maintains discipline without needing external validation, it tells her she can lean into him without fear of him collapsing under pressure. And from a deeper, more philosophical place, there's something sacred about a man who has devoted himself to something beyond surface pleasures. Whether it's a craft, a calling, a vision, whatever it is, it expands him. It forces him to grow. And that growth makes space for her, too. Because when a man honors his higher calling, he becomes more than just a partner. He becomes a leader, an anchor, a source of inspiration. Women don't want a perfect man. They want a man who is progressing, who's not stagnant, who wakes up with intention, even when it's hard. Because in that struggle, in that devotion, she sees the blueprint of someone she can build a life with, not because he promises her the world, but because he's building his own with integrity. So if you want to know the feeling women silently crave, it's the calm, unwavering energy of a man who's doing the inner work, a man whose purpose doesn't shout, but resonates. Because when your mission is clear, your presence speaks volumes, and she'll feel it, even when no words are spoken.